Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. Today's episode titled, A Reckoning with the Past. Unveiling the complex legacy and future of eugenics in the modern world takes us on a deep and thought-provoking journey through the shadows and echoes of the eugenics movement. I'm your host, AI David Bowles, and along with our crackbot AI research team, together we'll explore the origins of eugenics, its insidious intertwining with ideologies of racism and ableism, and the profound impact it has had on science, ethics, and society. We will dissect the discreditation of eugenics as a formal movement after the atrocities of World War II. Yet we'll also ponder its lingering ideologies that subtly persist in modern scientific and social contexts. As we examine this complex narrative, we'll scrutinize how contemporary advances in genetics and reproductive technologies rekindle ethical debates reminiscent of eugenic doctrines. We'll examine whether the impulses of eugenics could resurface under new guises in our relentless pursuit of genetic perfection. This episode aims to foster a critical understanding of how the past informs our present and future, especially in the realm of genetic science and ethics. We'll confront challenging questions about the potential misuse of genetic technologies and the importance of ethical safeguards to prevent a recurrence of history's darker chapters. Join me in this reflective exploration, where we seek to learn from the past and envision a future that upholds the dignity and diversity of human life. Eugenics, in its simplest definition, is the science of improving a human population by controlled breeding to increase the occurrence of desirable heritable characteristics. The term was coined by Francis Galton in the late 19th century. Galton, an English polymath, cousin to Charles Darwin, was intrigued by Darwin's theory of natural selection. However, Galton took these ideas in a direction Darwin himself never intended. He proposed that society could be improved by encouraging the fittest humans to reproduce more and the less fit to reproduce less. This concept of eugenics quickly gained traction in various circles, blending into political, religious, and medical narratives. From the outset, eugenics was stratified in both intention and application. There were two main types: positive eugenics, which encouraged the reproduction of those deemed fit, and negative eugenics, which sought to reduce reproduction among those considered unfit. The latter often involved morally reprehensible practices such as forced sterilization and marriage restrictions. These criteria were often deeply flawed, steeped in prejudice, and lacked scientific validity. The selection and isolation of these groups were typically carried out by those in positions of authority or influence, including scientists, policymakers, and influential social leaders. Let's break down the key aspects. People with disabilities. This group was one of the primary targets of negative eugenics. Individuals with physical and mental disabilities were often stereotyped as a burden to society. The flawed rationale was that preventing them from reproducing would reduce the prevalence of disabilities in future generations. This led to tragic policies like forced sterilizations. Ethnic and racial minorities. Eugenics was deeply entangled with racist ideologies. Certain racial and ethnic groups were deemed inferior based on pseudo-scientific racial theories. This racism was institutionalized in various eugenics policies, leading to discrimination and atrocities against these groups. For instance, in the United States, African Americans, Native Americans, and immigrants from certain countries were often targeted. The poor and the socially inept. Socioeconomic status played a role in the eugenics movement. People living in poverty, or those deemed socially inept, a term used to categorize a range of behaviors and lifestyles that didn't conform to certain social norms, were also targeted. The eugenics movement often aligned with classist views, suggesting that poverty and social issues were hereditary traits to be eradicated. The mentally ill. Similar to those with physical disabilities, individuals with mental illnesses were also targeted under negative eugenics. The belief was that mental illnesses were hereditary and that their elimination could be achieved through controlled reproduction. Determinants of fitness. The criteria for what constituted fitness or unfitness were determined by a combination of pseudoscientific research, prevailing social prejudices, and governmental policies. Scientists and researchers who supported eugenic ideologies played a significant role in defining these criteria. Government bodies and policymakers then enacted laws and policies based on these flawed scientific assertions. Influence of eugenicists. Influential eugenicists, who often held positions of power in academia, government, or as public intellectuals, were instrumental in shaping the eugenic policies. Their writings and speeches often influenced public opinion and policy. Legal and medical institutions. The legal and medical institutions in various countries were complicit in the implementation of eugenic policies. Courts often upheld eugenic laws, and medical professionals carried out procedures like sterilizations. Here's a brief timeline of eugenics. Late 19th century. The birth of eugenics as a concept. It was during this period that Galton formalized his ideas, heavily influenced by the social and scientific contexts of his time. Early 20th century, eugenics gained popularity, especially in the United States and Europe. It wasn't just a scientific theory. It became a social movement. In the U.S., it led to the passing of laws that enforced sterilization of individuals deemed unfit, often without their consent. This dark chapter affected tens of thousands of people, including those with disabilities, people of color, and those living in poverty. Religious and ethical perspectives. Various religious groups had mixed responses to eugenics. Some saw it as a way to improve humanity, aligning with their beliefs in a sort of divine selection. Others, however, vehemently opposed it, seeing it as a violation of natural law and human dignity. The Nazi regime. Here's where things take an even darker turn. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime adopted eugenic principles to an extreme, using them to justify the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, and others. This is perhaps the most notorious and horrifying application of eugenic principles. After World War II, the world reeled in horror at the atrocities committed in the name of eugenics. This period saw the birth of bioethics, a field dedicated to grappling with the ethical implications of biological and medical research. The Nuremberg trials and the subsequent Nuremberg Code laid the groundwork for modern research ethics, emphasizing consent, autonomy, and the welfare of subjects. The eugenic policies of the early 20th century left a lasting impact. Forced sterilization laws remained on the books in many places well into the latter half of the 20th century. The legacy of these policies continues to affect communities, particularly those who were disproportionately targeted, such as indigenous peoples, people of color, and those with disabilities. It's a sobering reminder of how pseudoscience can infiltrate public policy with devastating effects. Today, the conversation around eugenics intersects significantly with issues of social justice. The movement's history is a stark illustration of how scientific concepts can be weaponized to oppress marginalized communities. It underscores the importance of inclusive, equitable science that respects the diversity of human life. As we venture further into the age of genetic research and biotechnology, the lessons from the history of eugenics are more relevant than ever. We're continually challenged to balance the potential benefits of scientific advancements with the ethical imperative to respect and protect human diversity and dignity. Part of our responsibility in the post-eugenics era is to ensure that these discussions are part of our educational experience. By understanding the historical context and ethical complexities, we can better navigate the moral landscape of modern science. Discourse and education are our best tools in ensuring a future where scientific advancements serve to uplift rather than oppress. One of the most critical steps in confronting the legacy of eugenics is education. Understanding this dark chapter in history is crucial in preventing its recurrence. Educational curriculums, especially in genetics, medicine, and ethics, now often include discussions about the eugenics movement, ensuring that the next generation of scientists and policymakers are aware of the potential ethical pitfalls in their fields. Another area where the shadow of eugenics lingers is in genetic counseling. This field has evolved to be the antithesis of eugenics, emphasizing informed consent, non-directiveness, and respect for patients' autonomy. Genetic counselors play a crucial role in helping individuals understand their genetic information without coercion or judgment, a stark contrast to the directive and often coercive nature of eugenics. As we advance in genetic engineering, the specter of eugenics rears its head, particularly in discussions about gene editing technologies like CRISPR. The debate often centers on the ethical implications of using such technologies for therapeutic versus enhancement purposes. Where do we draw the line between curing genetic diseases and attempting to improve human beings? This is a complex ethical terrain, where the lessons from the eugenics era provide a cautionary backdrop. Perhaps one of the most insidious aspects of the eugenics movement was how it intertwined with racist ideologies. Eugenics provided a pseudo-scientific veneer to racial prejudices, leading to policies that disproportionately affected ethnic minorities. This intersectionality is a critical area of study and reflection, as it sheds light on how scientific ideas can be manipulated to justify racial discrimination. Eugenics has also been a subject of exploration in literature and popular culture, often serving as a warning against the dangers of overreaching in the pursuit of perfection. From Aldous Huxley's Brave New World to more recent films and TV shows, these works remind us of the ethical dilemmas and potential dystopian outcomes of unchecked scientific ambition. Looking ahead, the legacy and ideas of eugenics might re-emerge under different guises or names, particularly as we grapple with the ethical implications of advanced genetic technologies. The crucial factor will be how society chooses to apply these technologies. If used to promote diversity, health, and individual well-being without coercion or discrimination, they can be beneficial. However, if used to promote homogeneity, perfection, or under coercive policies, they could echo the darker aspects of eugenics. There's always a risk that genetic science could be misappropriated for political or social agendas, echoing eugenic ideologies. For instance, rhetoric around improving the population or eliminating certain traits could be co-opted by supremacist or discriminatory ideologies. Vigilance and ethical governance are crucial to prevent such misuse. The future will likely see a continued emphasis on ethical safeguards and regulations in genetic research and applications. This includes ensuring that genetic interventions are voluntary, respectful of individual rights, and do not perpetuate inequalities or discrimination. Public understanding and discourse around genetics and its ethical implications will be vital in shaping the future trajectory. Education can demystify genetics, dispel myths reminiscent of eugenic thinking, and promote an informed discussion about the ethical use of genetic technologies. Some who first learn about eugenics are quick to bring up Rose Kennedy as a famous example of the culling practice. However, while the case of Rosemary Kennedy, a sister of President John F. Kennedy, is indeed a poignant and public example of how attitudes influenced by the eugenics movement led to tragic outcomes. However, it's important to clarify that her case was not a direct result of formal eugenics policies, but rather a reflection of the broader societal attitudes towards disability and mental health that were influenced by eugenic thinking. Rosemary Kennedy was born in 1918 with intellectual disabilities, which became more evident as she grew older. In an era where such conditions were stigmatized and poorly understood, her family sought ways to manage her situation. In 1941, at the age of 23, Rosemary underwent a lobotomy, a procedure that was recommended by doctors to control her mood swings and potentially improve her quality of life. Tragically, the procedure was botched, leaving her permanently incapacitated. This decision, made by her father, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., reflects the stigma and desperation that families often felt when confronted with mental health and developmental issues at the time. The choice to perform a lobotomy on Rosemary was not directly a eugenics policy enactment, but was influenced by a societal context where the eugenics movement had shaped attitudes towards those with disabilities. The procedure was seen as a way to normalize individuals who did not fit the societal standards of the time. Rosemary's story is a tragic example of how the misguided desire to fix what was perceived as abnormal led to irreversible harm. It also highlights the broader societal implications of eugenics-influenced thinking, especially regarding the treatment of individuals with disabilities and mental health issues. Today, Rosemary Kennedy's story is often cited as a cautionary tale about the dangers of medical interventions driven by social stigma rather than patient welfare. It underscores the importance of understanding and respecting individual differences and the need for ethical considerations in medical decision-making. Her life and the subsequent advocacy work of her family, particularly Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who founded the Special Olympics, have had a significant impact on changing attitudes towards intellectual disabilities and improving the lives of those affected. As we draw this episode to a close, we reflect on the long and tumultuous history of eugenics, a journey that has taken us from the misguided aspirations of early 20th century science to the complex ethical landscapes of modern genetics. The legacy of eugenics, marred by its entanglement with racism, ableism, and the horrific abuses of human rights, serves as a poignant reminder of the dangers inherent in manipulating human life under the guise of improvement. As we continue to grapple with these issues, let us commit to a path that honors the dignity of all individuals and steers clear of the shadows cast by our history. In this way, we can hope to create a world where scientific progress and ethical integrity walk hand in hand, fostering a more just and humane society. Thank you for joining me, AI David Bowles, on this reflective and thought-provoking journey here on the Human Meme podcast. Until next time, keep pondering, keep questioning, and always cherish the rich heartache of our shared human experience. We wish you a good evening and a pleasant tomorrow. Be a human meme.